Please.
Good evening. This is Pam Hubbard from Golden Ciphers Youth Development and Cultural Arts Center. This is our family night, and this is the last night before the end of the year. We would like to introduce to you our elder, Paul Hill, who was one of the original Greater Cleveland Kwanzaa Alliance members, and he is here to discuss with us tonight how that alliance started, where it is now, and what do we need to do to move forward in the future. Without further ado, Elder Paul Hill.
It's an honor and pleasure being here at Golden Ciphers, one of my favorite places, my favorite people, Pam Hubbard, all of our young people. Is, a tree is only as strong as the branches. You all represent the branches of the tree, and you represent the future. And Kwanzaa also represents the future. It's about the future. It's organized for us to acknowledge the importance of our past, based on tradition. Tradition being very important as far as the foundation that our ancestors' lives were based on, our lives, our parents' lives are based on, and hopefully your lives are based on, your children's lives will be based on. So it's for the living and the yet unborn. This year is important because it's the 50th anniversary of Kwanzaa, which started in 1966. Last year was the 50th anniversary of the Nguzo Saba, which preceded the Kwanzaa celebration, but Kwanzaa is based on the Nguzo Saba, but the actual practice was put in place of the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles, in 1965. And Malala Karanga, Dr. Karanga, basically came up with the 7 principles as a minimum moral value system. I gave him a call because I was asking him, is it possible to add another principle? He said, well, it is the minimum moral value system, so you can't add another principle. He said, well, why are you interested in adding another principle? I said, well, we've worked with young people over the years, and one of the things that the young people had brought to our attention, they felt that a principle and a value that was very important to them was the value of Hashima. And Hashima means respect. They felt a lot of the problems that they had with adults, with one another, had to do with respect. A lot of times we've heard some young people say, well, he dissed me, or she dissed me, or this adult dissed me. But this respect is very, very important to young people. Would all of you agree, the importance of respect? Yeah. So in sharing that with him, he said, well, yeah, that makes sense, especially coming from young people. And again, it is a minimum moral value system, and we can add principles. So the National Rites of Passage Institute, about 20 years ago, we ended up adding Hashima. So we practice what is called the Nguzo Nani. Nani in Kiswahili is 8. So, the 8 principles. But the 7 principles that most people are familiar with, are very important principles, and I use it interchangeably with values. Values are important because values are things that are important to us. Usually in working with young people, and they may have maybe difficulty in expressing what a value is, a question I usually will ask them is, what are you willing, and this is extreme, what are you willing to die for? And I'm going to ask you as young people, what are you willing to give up your life for? Family. So family is a very, very important value. What else?
Freedom.
Freedom. That's an important value, just the value of freedom itself.
Community.
Community.
Rights.
Rights. Okay. It's real interesting. I haven't heard one. How about yourself? Your own life. That's something you're willing to fight for, your own life? And, when I mention that, there's an African proverb that goes, I am because we are, therefore I am, which shows the importance and the connection between the I and the we. And You know, the Nguzo Saba represents that, the importance of not only being, you know, concerned about yourself, but also being concerned about others. Not only is the emphasis on the me, but also, you know, the we. But let me just share a little bit about Kwanzaa, you know, from a personal perspective. The primary place that Kwanzaa is supposed to be practiced is within the family. In 1969, you know, my wife, myself, and our first child. And then from that point on, every year, you know, we were involved in celebrating Kwanzaa, you know, within our family. And then it progressed to, you know, a secondary place for celebrating Kwanzaa is within the community itself. Because Kwanzaa is an in-gathering celebration. It's an in-gathering celebration where family comes together and community comes together. Again, to give thanks for coming through the year and to prepare for the new year. The first community Kwanzaa that I participated in was in 1982. Our families, we said, well, we need to get together and celebrate it, you know, within the community. So I remember back in 1982, at that time I had founded an organization, and it was one of the sponsors of one of the nights of Kwanzaa. It was called Simba Wachanga Malitu, but that means Young Lions and Queens. But it was a rites of passage organization that I started many, many years ago. But we sponsored one of the nights of Kwanzaa, the first night. And I remember the second night was Norma and Don Freeman. Norma and Don Freeman. Don Freeman, you know, social worker, activist, you know, within the community for a number of years. You know, he's still alive. Him and his lovely queen are still alive. So the second night of Kwanzaa we had at his organization on Lexington, his youth and family organization. And I remember the third night was at the Charles Carr Center, which is on 55th and Woodland. And Terry Ali no longer lives in Cleveland. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia. But her and her husband, Aaron Ali, they were the sponsors to the Charles V. Carr Center, you know, for the next night. And then the fourth night, Oscar Keiti. He's no longer alive, but he was associated with the Murders Taylor Multi-Services Center that's located at 134th in Kinsman, in 13422. It's still in existence. It's a combination community service center as well as mental health center. You know, they sponsored, you know, the fourth night. The fifth night, Ella Afi was involved. And you know, I forget exactly what organization she was affiliated with that sponsored it. Then I remember Curtis Wilson. He's the former head of the Black Studies Department. Dr. Curtis Wilson at Cleveland State University. He has gone through transition, passed on. But Cleveland State University, the Black Studies Department was also, you know, another sponsor of Kwanzaa. And the last night, it was in Euclid at a church. I forget the name of the church, and I forget the name of the particular individual that represented that church. But again, it represented different organizations, you know, throughout the greater Cleveland area. So we took on that responsibility of sponsoring it as individuals through various sponsoring organizations. The first one was very successful. The first community one that we had was very successful. And then we got together after that first one and say, well, look, you know, we might as well come together and create an organization to have what ended up becoming the Greater Cleveland Kwanzaa Alliance. So that was in 1983. That's when the Greater Cleveland Kwanzaa Alliance was founded. Now the founding members, which included myself, also Doris Willis, Jamela Alfi, Mark Jenkins was a founding member, and then Carlotta Williams were the original founding members of that organization. The only ones that are left in Cleveland right now would be myself, you know, my wife for 48 years, and then Doris Willis. Others have relocated. Even though they've relocated, you know, they're still very much involved in their communities in the sponsoring of Kwanzaa. One of the, you know, thinking back upon Kwanzaa, there was a lot of resistance, I remember, you know, in those that practice Kwanzaa, for many of the reasons that you know, that Elder Pam Hubbard shared with us, you know, as far as folks say, well, you know, that's about that African thing, because back then and even today, you know, I'm ashamed to say there are a lot of folks that still have problems with being identified with Africa and being called Africans. Even in some schools today, you know, even young people today, here it is, 21st century, 2016 going into 2017, have a problem with being called African and having anything to do with Africa, which is nothing more than a reflection on the environment that they live in, you know, the adults in the environment that they live in, and still, you know, and looking upon being an African and being, you know, from the originating or being a descendant of Africa, looked upon in a very negative basis. And as a result of not having any information, they say they don't like it. But how are you not going to like it when you don't know anything about it? You don't have any sense of history. You don't have any information on it. But you know, that's the way a lot of people, you know, react when there's something new, and you know, they don't want to deal with it. Now, to me, Kwanzaa is important because Kwanzaa reflects culture. And when you think of culture, what do you think of? What words come to mind? I'm curious. Culture. What does that mean to you? Okay, life.
History, foundation, it brings you together.
History,
people together.
foundation, tradition. You know who we are. You know, 'cause, and all of you are absolutely right. And to me, Kwanzaa is like glue. It's what holds things together. It's what holds things together. You know, when I think of culture and I think about history and I think about our tradition, why is 2019 an important date to remember? What happened that would bring to mind 2019? It's the 400th celebration, or will be the 400th celebration of what? Almost 400 years ago, there were 20 and odd that were kidnapped from West Africa, specifically the countries of Angola, Congo. They were Angolan Congolese that were brought to this country and were brought here for the purpose of being enslaved. A lot of people think that we came here as slaves. Did we come here as slaves? We came here as what?
What did we come here?
Africans. We arrived as Africans that went through an enslavement process. 1619, Jamestown, Virginia, the first Africans that were enslaved were brought to the colonies, because it wasn't a country at that time, were brought to the colonies. And those 20 ended up being enslaved, and some of them ended up being indentured servants. What's the difference between a slave and an indentured servant?
And the indentured servant works for a amount of time, and then they
Right.
can become free. A slave
Very good.
is a lifetime contract.
Exactly, a lifetime contract. So again, a lot of folks are, you know, they don't realize that some of us were initially brought here as Africans that became indentured servants. But most of us came here as Africans that were enslaved, say between 50 and 75 million. What percentage do you think ended up in North America, the United States? Only 5%, or 500 or 500,000. The other 95% ended up where? They ended up in the Caribbean. They ended up in Mexico. They ended up in Central America, and they ended up in Brazil, South America, specifically Brazil. Because Brazil, in some instances, is more Africa than what you find in Africa today. You know, as far as the food, as far as the culture, as far as the people. I mean, it's a fascinating place as far as their African retention, their cultural continuity, what they were able to maintain, you know, as Africans that they brought with them that, you know, that helped sustain them. Plus enslavement in those areas outside of the United States, one of the biggest difference was that black people or Africans, we were always in a majority. In the United States, when we were brought here, or the colonies, we were always in a minority. So we were always at a disadvantage. But you know, you're looking at places like Cuba, in the Caribbean, there's a place called Yanga, Mexico, places in Central America and in South America. Being in the majority, we were able to retain a lot of our Africanity, which made them a lot different than we are, you know, than we are. But all those things represent, you know, the foundation and the history relative to Kwanzaa, because Kwanzaa is a time, you know, you come together, you reminisce about our history and the importance of our history, you reminisce and you share about our culture and the importance of their culture. So if there's anything that's going to be important to us moving forward, and it's also contributed to our survival, and not only to be able to survive, but also thrive from 1619 up to 2016, it had to do with our culture, which was based on our history and which was based on our traditions. Okay. Kwanzaa is also important because it's a time not only of celebration, ingathering, but it's also a time of remembrance, you know, giving thanks to those that have come before us because of their blood, their sweat, and their tears. So, you know, during Kwanzaa, you know, we want to recognize within our family and those heroes and sheroes of the past, those heroes and sheroes today, you know, the elders, those in your lives that have been very positive, you know, we want to recognize, you know, those that have passed on as well as those that are alive that have contributed, you know, to our lives. So remembrance is very important. Giving thanks is very important. Thanksgiving for, you know, for everything that we have is very important. One of the things I do every morning when I wake up is I thank the Creator just for waking up. A lot of times we take that for granted, but there's no guarantee you're gonna wake up in the morning. So there's something greater than us, you know, whatever that is relative to whatever you believe in as far as religion and denomination of those religions. We know that there is something greater than all of us, and we want to give thanks to that. So all those things reflect Kwanzaa and, you know, the history of Kwanzaa, where a few individuals got together. They wanted to put something in place. They wanted to leave something for youth. Kwanzaa is like a baton in a relay. There's certain traditions, there's certain cultural things that we want to pass on to you, so you can pass on to who?
The next generation.
Yeah, to the next generation. Because, you know, life is like a relay. I'm not going to be around forever. Baba's not going to be around forever. Elder Hubbard's not going to be around forever. Your parents aren't going to be around forever. So we're preparing you to take our places. Elder Hubbard talks about rites of passage. Rites of passage is a process for just regeneration. Regenerating and creating those that will take our place. And sharing with you certain information, certain ceremonies, certain rituals that are important, you know, to maintain and keep the culture going on. And the work that I do and the work that, you know, Baba does, the work that Elder Hubbard does, culture is very important, rituals are very important, ceremonies are very important. By just Golden Ciphers, you know, having me here, you know, sharing with you a little bit of the history. So it's become part of her process. It becomes a way of life, you know, that we practice, that many of us are practicing.
Brother Hill just put it very clearly in many ways, and then the input from the young people also supports what he was saying. Each generation is different. Each generation takes in information differently. So I would say that each time we celebrate or participate in Kwanzaa, that we all try to learn something new, not only about Kwanzaa, but about ourselves and about our community, so that we can try to see if we can make sure if these principles are actually working for us. so that we can go forward, because a lot of effort was put into creating Kwanzaa, and it actually works if you really practice what you preach.
Stay tuned. There's more to come. Peace.